Hey there guys, so I've made a few videos in the past talking about the benefits of kettlebells or specific exercises. In this video I thought I'd make a more general introduction to kettlebells and explain how anyone can get started. Now I know a few people right now probably watching and thinking, Adam, what are you doing teaching people how to get started with kettlebells? Your kettlebell skills are not good enough. I hate you. I'll get you next time, Adam. But actually, that's kind of the point of this video. Because some of my kettlebell technique is alright, and some of it I'm still learning, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. I want to say that there's quite a lot of gatekeeping that goes on in the world of kettlebell training, but it doesn't need to be that deep. Anybody can pick up a kettlebell and start making great benefits from using one. Just a quick interlude to say I actually love when you guys give me feedback on my form, both on my kettlebell training and my martial arts, as well as other stuff. But I have also seen cases online where people get feedback that isn't so constructive, and this might actually put them off of kettlebell training altogether, and I think that's a real shame. Because fundamentally, of course, if you want to get started with the kettlebells, then the easiest way to do it is just to pick up a kettlebell, choose an exercise, and give it a go. Of course, though, you're not going to see any benefits unless you take your top off. And of course, what makes the kettlebell swing such a great option for so many people starting out is just that it offers a lot of benefits that you can't get anywhere else. First of all, let's say hip hinge. If you're training from home, then doing something like a deadlift is actually pretty tricky to do. So having this option to do something where you're hinging the hips and training the glutes is really great. It lets you train that wherever you might be. At the same time though, it's also more ballistic than a deadlift, which makes it particularly effective for training athleticism, jumping high, running fast. And of course, it's a form of strength endurance. It's brilliant for training you to use your strength for long periods of time. It's that happy middle ground between cardio and strength training, which just makes it a brilliant tool to slot into your training. And that's what makes this such a great option, because it probably fits really nicely into your current programming. You can choose any exercise. You just need to look at your current training, say what's missing, and then throw it in there. So for me, I actually started kettlebell training because randomly, I used to have like this really little novelty kettlebell, like a 7 kilogram one. And it was way before, this was when I was like 13, so it was way before it was in the public zeitgeist, before Pavel spoke about them or Tim Ferriss. I don't know where I got it, and I didn't know what I was doing with it. And I used to just use it to do clean and press. I called it cross-body clean and press. I'd grab it like this and push it out like that. And I didn't use particularly good form. It wasn't, I'd cross my center line or anything like that. Just realized this was a great way to burn a lot of calories, to get my heart rate going in a really short amount of time, and to train my whole body, my legs and my upper body together. And so that's what I used it for. This just became my de facto finisher, my workouts, way before I had any idea what I was doing. Later, I did read Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Body, where I learned about the kettlebell swing and how useful it could be. Then I asked a guy at my gym, who was a kettlebell coach, to teach it to me. So that's where I got a good foundation in doing the kettlebell swing. I'm telling you this to just show that you can just pick up exercises with the kettlebell like you can with any other piece of equipment. People are so quick to jump on the slightest bit of incorrect form with the kettlebell swing, but they can't even decide on what that is. Sure, there are better ways of doing it and worse ways of doing it, but you're going to have people tell you off if you use straight arms. You're going to have people tell you off if you use slightly bent arms. Whatever you do, there's going to be someone who doesn't think it's quite right. And actually, there's only a few things you really need to be aware of with the kettlebell swing. One is to make sure that you are hinging the hips and not bending the back or squatting, because that's not a swing. That said, it is okay to bend your legs a little bit. I'm doing a hinge, but I'm bending my legs slightly. It's just that you want it to be predominantly a hip hinge. You've got to make sure that you're holding it right with like a hook grip so you don't create lots of nasty calluses. But if you get a callus, it's not the end of the world. You want to make sure that your arms are driving the movement so that when your arms touch the legs, that's what cues you to hinge the waist, and then you spring it back up to launch it back up in the air. And you don't want to use your shoulders to lift the weight, although there are variations where you do that. In the American swing, you swing it all the way up over your head. So don't get too hung up on this, just refine the movement over time. You'll actually find that this is really fun. Doing the movement, watching yourself back, filming it back and improving. And as long as you're using a lighter weight, it's really not that easy to injure yourself, despite what some people would have you believe. You don't need to fearmonger around the kettlebell swing. A lot of people say kettlebells are dangerous if you get them wrong, but I would argue that doing a very, very heavy back squat or bench press is just as dangerous. Deadlift, absolutely. People are unlikely to cause themselves serious injury if they're swinging a 5 or 10 kilogram kettlebell. There are those that say you should use a heavier kettlebell because it forces you to use better technique, but actually you can still get the right technique using a light one, and that means that if you do get it wrong, you're not going to hurt yourself. Then, when you're really confident with that movement, you can move on.
You guys know that for any functional training, which definitely includes kettlebell training, I highly recommend barefoot shoes or minimal footwear. That's why I'm happy to say that this video is sponsored by Vivo Barefoot. Vivo Barefoot make what are, in my opinion, the very best barefoot shoes available. That's because of the amazing comfort they offer, the quality and the longevity, the sustainable production, and the wide range of styles to suit any wearer and any activity. You can get everything from boots to shoes for the gym to smart shoes to running shoes and more, all with the barefoot ethos. And what that essentially means is that the shoes are designed with a minimal sole so that you can feel the ground underneath your feet. No raised heels so that your feet are flat on the floor and your calves aren't constantly being shortened, and a wide toe box so that your toes can move and aren't crushed together. All this allows you to balance better when swinging a kettlebell and to get a proper deep stretch when you're in the bottom of a squat, for example. Quite frankly, squatting with your heels elevated is not the same thing at all. I love my Vivos for kettlebell workouts, but I also love them for trail running, where they let my feet adapt to the uneven terrain, for calisthenics, where their light weight allows me to move more freely, same thing for martial arts, and for weightlifting, where the lack of a squishy sole makes me more stable on the ground.
And if you want to try a pair for yourself, then head over to vivobarefoot.com and use code BIONEER20 at checkout to get 20% off your first pair.
Thanks again to Vivo Barefoot for sponsoring this video and supporting the channel, and for being so consistently awesome to work with. And now, on with the show.
I'm trying to learn the clean and jerk. Obviously my technique still requires a lot of work because it's really early days, but just learning it is really, really fun. And there's tons of benefits to this movement, from learning to create explosive power to, again, using the entire body and another explosive hip hinge, being able to tie together multiple different movements. It's all really good stuff, great for strength, endurance, getting the blood flowing, etc. I really shouldn't be doing clean and jerks with 35 kilograms as I am here because my technique's not really there yet, but I forgot to bring my 20 kilograms to the office and I'm making this video, so you gotta do what you gotta do. You know guys, I share my less than perfect technique with you because I want you to see my journey and my learning process, and that I'm not perfect at everything and I still give it a go. But you don't have to challenge yourself to learn these more complicated moves. There's actually tons of exercises that work really well for kettlebells, that are quite unique to kettlebells, that don't involve hip hinges or explosive movements or anything akin to Olympic lifting. For example, one of my favorites is the kettlebell halo. This is a movement where you take the kettlebell and move it around your head, training the triceps, stretching the lats, opening up the shoulders. This is a fantastic exercise. I made a whole video on it, and there's not really anything you can do that's similar. If you try it with a dumbbell, you're going to find it's terribly awkward. You can do it with a weight plate, but again, still not really well suited to that. This is another circular movement you can use for high rep ranges to build real shoulder endurance and mobility at the same time. Translates really well to things like martial arts, throwing, and it trains you to use both sides ambidextrously. So it's really a fantastic exercise and not really all that technical. Likewise, thanks to their big old handles, kettlebells are really, really good for things like farmers' walks, loaded carries. Likewise, another really good one is the alternating explosive bent over row, where you bend over, row the weight up, catch it in the other hand, and then do the same again. This not only trains the lats as you'd expect and the grip, but it also trains the multifidus muscles, and it trains the obliques, and it trains the rotators in the spine, because you need to brace for that incoming rotational movement. Another great variation, by the way, is to do one-armed kettlebell deadlifts, or RDLs, and whilst this might not look like a particularly difficult movement, and it's not, it is a great way to just practice that movement pattern, hinging the hips and engaging the glutes. And if you do enough of them, you can actually stimulate some hypertrophy this way as well. This is to really show that whilst kettlebells can be quite advanced tools, they also actually work really well as beginner tools. Just depends on the exercise you do with them, just like any other piece of equipment.
I guess what I'm really trying to say here is that you shouldn't feel like you can't touch a kettlebell if you're not an expert. Saying you don't know kettlebell training because you can't snatch or clean and jerk is like saying you don't know anything about barbells because you can't snatch or clean and jerk. Everyone is free to use the kettlebell in the way that best suits them. And if all you want to do is squat with them or curl with them, well then that's still kettlebell training and you're still golden.
A lot of people say this in my kettlebell training videos. They say, hey, but I can do that with a dumbbell. And it's like, well, I mean, maybe, but it's super awkward. You can also liken this to calisthenics training. Of course, there are advanced moves like handstand push-ups and planche, but then you've got your push-ups, your air squats. So really anybody can enjoy calisthenics, and I think anybody should be able to enjoy kettlebell training. And I think that's the one thing I want this video to achieve, is to encourage more people to just give kettlebells a try, even if it's for more basic movements, because you'll find that they just move differently than dumbbells. Having that momentum, being able to rack them a bit more conveniently, makes things like weighted squatting or the kettlebell halo that much more comfortable. And then once you get used to the kettlebell and the way it feels, you might then start to experiment with things like the kettlebell swing. And actually, kettlebells and calisthenics pair really well together. You get the same longer rep ranges that build strength, endurance, tendon strength and all that. This is something I've been repping a lot lately, combining calisthenics with kettlebell training for higher reps for surprising results. And the kettlebell really does fill some niches that nothing else can. But likewise, there's no need to be a kettlebell purist. If max strength is what you're interested in, then barbells will be better with those compound movements. Where I think kettlebells are great is just where you can plug the gaps and do things like train rotation, open up the shoulders, train strength endurance, train the hip hinge at home without a power rack. You guys also know that I love goblet curls like this, because they mimic the way we often hold things when we curl. They train the grip at the same time. And a lot of you pointed out that this really works when you blow up your biceps, especially when you did higher rep ranges, train that strength endurance. But a lot of you also pointed out that you can essentially get most of the same benefits from doing hammer curls. And it is true. It's mostly the same. But if you check it out, the movement is slightly different because my hands aren't connected in the same way. I can't do it quite as quickly, my posture's slightly different, and my grip's slightly different. I actually do both. And that's kind of my point. It's not a competition. It's not like, hey, why do that? You can do this. It's like, these are both good. Let's do both of them. And so you don't need to be a kettlebell expert to start enjoying kettlebell training. You just need to look at what it could offer you and where that slots into your program. Then not only are you going to start being someone who now trains with kettlebells, you're also going to start becoming more of a cross trainer, more of a generalist. And that's something that I think we should all strive for, because just max strength isn't enough. And if you're interested in training with a variety of different modalities like this, then you should check out my ebook and training program, Super Functional Training 2.0, linked in the description down below. Whole point is we're combining different training modalities to train every aspect of health and performance, from speed and mobility to strength and explosiveness, even to brain function. So if that sounds interesting and you don't want to have to choose, then check it out. Either way though, guys, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.